I have to start recording before I actually welcome everyone. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Dan Kolansky. I'm with Virtual Administrator. I'm so excited to have you guys here. I apologize in advance for my clickbait email that I just sent out about a couple hours ago. I know that was a little clickbaity, but I think that it is worth it. We got some really cool people on the call today for you guys. Continuing in our webinars on CloudJumper and Workspace as a service. We're just going to keep rolling right along. We've been kind of doing these for about a year now. We've got quite a few of them. And just as a FYI, if you ever want to get access to some of the webinars that we've done in the past, just shoot me an email. Send an email to dan@virtualadministrator.com, and I will be happy to share what we have for you today. So we've got a bunch of people from CloudJumper on the line today. We've got Patrick Sullivan, who's channel account manager. You guys know him well at this point, I think. He's been a willing participant in many of my crazy calls. Max Pruger is also on the line. And we also have Anthony was supposed to be here, but I think he had something come up. So he's going to be out of hat today. So we will be avoiding super, super technical questions. But I think we can answer most everything that you guys have to ask. And today, our favorite, we've got Beaker on the call, Scott Bechtold, who is a channel sales manager, or as he refers to himself, chief instigator. He is going to be on the call today. So Scott, I'm just going to give a quick introduction. He is/was a partner at Virtual Administrator for many years. And he's been working with us, doing Kaseya and things like that. When we started doing CloudJumper, originally in Genix, he was like gung-ho, like, let's do this. And he just went out there and sold the bananas out of it. And it kind of went really, really well for him, to the point where you guys can confirm this, but you guys picked him up. So he's now officially working for CloudJumper, correct?
That is correct.
Awesome. So now he is doing some really cool things for CloudJumper, and we have the opportunity, since we kind of have an in as being the people who got him originally connected and hooked up. We get a chance to steal some of his expertise and share it with all of you guys. So kind of the goal today is to do, I'm calling it the Q&A series, but really it's going to be a Q&A webinar style webinar. So that means that if you have a question, feel free to punch it in at any time. I will probably interrupt Scott quite a bit. Sorry, Scott.
No problem, Dan.
And bring up additional questions or any additional insights. And really, we're just going to talk about the idea of workspaces as a service. I had a big question box on the registration form. You guys are pretty clear that you still want to know more about pricing. You want to know more about how to position this service in a way that prospects are willing to buy it. And Scott happens to be the expert on that. So that's really cool that we can get him on the call today. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in.
Expert may be a little too harsh of a word there, Dan, but
I gotta set the bar really high there.
But what would really be helpful, or I'd be interested in that may be interesting, is if everyone that's on the call could, if you currently are selling the cloud or you're thinking about selling the cloud, if you could let us know what you're thinking about using for a per seat price, that'd be wonderful, so we can get an idea of where you guys are thinking that it should be priced, and then we'll go into some detail on why it should be higher, probably, and we'll work on it that way.
Gotcha. So just punch in the question box if you have if you've settled on a price, or a program, how we've obviously made recommendations, but if you settle on a price, you can go ahead and punch that in.
And then, if you don't mind, Dan, I'd like to just give everyone attending a quick overview of how I got to be a little bit of an old guy selling cloud already, and the whole 9 yards, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Okay, so about 6.5 years ago, I started selling the cloud through a provider, and I have been through the cloud provider ups and downs, primarily downs for the first 4 years. I ran into my first cloud provider, after I had just about 100 seats, um, just closed the doors. The second one decided with 2 weeks left in the year they were going to cancel their partner program. The third one went out of business, and the fourth one stuck, but it was constantly a problem, and I had to have, we're not going to name names or anything, but I had to have certified engineers for this and certified engineers for that. And during this whole process, I had one client that didn't want that interface. They wanted more of the remote desktop interface. And that's how I was working with Patrick Sullivan at the time. And I went ahead and I set that client up there, and it was working wonderfully. And I was sitting in my office one day, and we're having problems with the other cloud provider just going on, and problems here, problems there. And it hit me that, we never have any problems with this one little company that we have on this other platform. Maybe I need to look at that a little bit further. And that's what I did. And I went ahead and I moved all of my seats to that platform. And the greatest thing happened in the world. All of a sudden, I didn't have, I think that my support tickets went down almost 80%. It became a pretty much fire and forget solution. It just worked. And that's the biggest compliment I can give CloudJumper, now CloudJumper and Nginx, is, once I deployed anyone on there and we went through the application install, which is a huge thing. It's so easy with CloudJumper. We have to mention that at some point. The solution just worked. It was not something that I had to constantly maintain and manage. It was something that, because of the way that it's engineered with their, it's called CWS, with their admin portal, that if you can basically order a pizza online, you can set up a new client, you can provision all their services, and get them up and running in a matter of minutes. And I was able to go ahead and use a lower tier person. A tier 1 person can go ahead and set up and maintain pretty much all of your cloud seats if you let them. And that's just the beauty of the solution. So that's how I came to CloudJumper, and then things happened, and in the last few years I've been lucky enough to build and sell a few MSPs, and I was lucky enough to talk to Max, who was kind enough to give me a shot, and that brings us where we are today. And I'd really like to give back to the MSP community, because I was frankly quite shocked at some of the prices people were trying to charge for their cloud workspace or their cloud solution. And they're either breaking even or probably not making any money, or not making as much as they could, which led me also to think, how many people still aren't on it? And as I've been working with Pat and Max and everyone else at CloudJumper, it's really surprising how many MSPs out there still haven't adopted this solution that is just a money-making machine if everything's put together correctly.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, once it's on, it's like an engine, right? Once you get the engine started,
right,
it just chugs. Rob actually had a question based on something that you mentioned. He said, how did you manage the clients when you're going through all these various providers? Talking about migrating and things like that. Is that something you want to speak to for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. The migration, well, let's back up. Maintaining the clients is, like we all know, we've been in this business. Well, I've been in this business a long time, and I'm sure everyone who's attending the webinar knows, just be upfront right away with your clients. During the process of companies going out of business or closing their partner channels and things of that nature, I was just very upfront with everyone and said, look, this is exactly what's happening. I took the hit for the migration to a new platform. I did it for all my clients at that time for free. It wasn't their fault that that company shut down their partner program or went out of business or something of that nature. That's not their fault. So you have to eat that, but to maintain a long-term client, it's so worth it when you're making really, really good recurring revenue profit every single month. So I ate
So you can afford
four or
that.
five. Yeah, so I ate $4,000, $5,000, $10,000. Yeah, I'm going to make that up in not a short amount of time, but I'm going to make that up. It probably in the first 4 months, 5 months, I'm going to have all that money back.
I think that we're in a market where it's always so volatile. I mean, companies appear and disappear so fast, it seems sometimes, that it's important to build that into your business model. You need that margin in there.
Yeah,
It's almost
and
like,
one of the things, I'm sorry, Dan, go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say it's almost like insurance.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And one of the things that really led me to CloudJumper also is, if everyone doesn't know, and you really need to look at this when you're looking at your cloud providers, how are they, are they well funded? Are they a public company? Are they a private company? And, CloudJumper is extremely well funded by a gentleman by the name of Al Sinelli, who sold his telcos, and I think it was 2010. Pat knows this better than I do. I apologize. For basically $850 million. And Mr. Sinelli is 100% committed to CloudJumper, believes that we're only channel, and that's it. We're only ever going to be channel. And so we're extremely well funded. And that's critical for anyone looking for a partner out there.
yeah, definitely. Well, so let's see, what was the first one I had here? Okay, so before we get to pricing, I know that's the elephant in the room, and people typed in a bunch of prices. I'm going to bring that up in a second. I
Sure.
want to touch on one other thing first because I think that this is really important before you talk price.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, really, this is more about positioning and positioning the service. So you go out there, you're talking to prospects, you're dealing with people, and one of our attendees who, let's see, I can find his name. This would be Dennis, put in a really good question. He said, clients are resisting, or he said clients, but I think he meant prospects, are resisting change and giving up control. So, you go from this pay as you go or the I bought it, I own it type mentality to these managed subscription models. Clients feel like they're just buying into a subscription and they aren't comfortable with that. Um, you,
Well, I think the position there to take is, instead of looking at it that way, everything about what you're doing in a cloud solution sale is an education process. It's an education sale. So every little bit of it, you have to educate the suspect or prospect because they have no idea. They think they do. They've heard the word cloud. You know, they've heard that, a lot of companies get hacked on the cloud. They don't know that that cloud's different from the cloud that you're giving them. So every little bit of a cloud solution sale is education. And when they come down to the I own it, well, what you have to, your first response is, but we're going to get you off that software upgrade, hamster wheel. We're going to get you off the hardware upgrade hamster wheel. We're actually going to prolong the amount of time you can use your hardware from maybe, let's say, maximum 36 months. If you're on the cloud and all it has to do is use remote desktop or Internet Explorer or Google Chrome, we may be able to get 5 years out of it. I know in my case I was able to get 5 and 6 years out of some hardware.
mm,
So it's learning to position it back to them that makes it more palatable. Oh, and by the way, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, over the long term, you're actually going to spend less money.
Dan, I'd like to jump in too on the
uh-huh.
I own it mentality. And this is Pat Sullivan, guys, one of the channel account managers. So the clients still own their data. It's just where it's being located and how it's being backed up and the whole technology around it. So really what you're giving up is you just now don't invest or own those aging servers. So you don't have to go through a hardware refresh again. You basically get that. It's nothing but an advantage to have the pay-as-you-go. So at any point, if they ever needed their data back, at the end of the day, they still own the data. It's just being housed in a much safer, secure model.
Interesting. And I guess when you think about it, they are already using cloud services. Like email is obviously one of the most common ones that very few people are hosting their own email these days.
iTunes, Netflix, a lot of folks are using it in their personal life, and that's my favorite example. You'll hear me use it time and time again. Blockbuster versus Netflix. Folks are moving away from buying DVDs and renting DVDs, and they're just going to that Netflix model, pay as you go.
Yeah, and it's cheaper and you get more.
Yep.
Cool. All right. If you guys have any questions about that, anything further you'd like to hear on that, then, feel free to punch it in. I'm going to move on because obviously the big thing that we want to cover today is this headline I put out. How do you justify that $200 per user per month? So before we cover that, I just want to read out, Scott, you asked for some prices that people were
Sure,
doing. So I saw a lot of 100, 125. There's one guy, he put in 100 to 25 to 225 per user. $90 per seat per month is one that I saw in here. And then this Whitney put in very specific. She said, oh, please, I hope I'm sorry, man, if I got it wrong. But anyway, it's 165 per user, which includes O365, Office Standard, and unlimited service during business hours, both remote and on-site. Your thoughts?
Okay.
So that's kind of what we have at the moment in here. It seems to hover in that 100 to 150, 160 kind of range.
Well, I can tell you that the average price that we see moving through CloudJumper, just on average, is between 130 and 150 a user, just on average. You know, for and let me also preface this beginning of this discussion with $200 a user a month didn't include my support offering. So, to the young, was it Whitney who was including her support on top of that?
It's not a her, by the way. Patrick corrected me.
Oh,
I'm so sorry. That was my fault.
Well, I heard that, so I apologize also. The $200 a seat was without my support offering. With my support offering bundled in, depending on the size of the company, it would go up by $90 to $105 a month, which ended up me averaging with my support offering and cloud solution right around $300 a month, $303 a month. The whole thing, again, goes to educating your client on the benefit of it. You know, if you don't take the time to educate your client on every single benefit of the cloud solution, then you're only going to get $90 a seat. And at $90 a seat, once you throw in your support offering and everything like that, you're losing money. If you're considering only charging $90 a seat, don't do cloud. Or sign up under virtual administrator and work with us, and we'll work with you to get your pricing and everything put together to where you can charge $200 a seat and get it. It's everything about it is an educational sale. Most people that I've seen don't take the time to educate the client on, you know, the infrastructure that we're building in the cloud is very similar to the infrastructure that we're replacing on site. There's going to be a server, there's going to be workspaces, you know, but above and beyond that, this is going to be enterprise grade that we could never afford to buy for your company and put on site. This is going to be servers that are $40,000, $50,000, if not more, things of that nature. So you have to educate them that even though they don't see it, if you were to replace their entire on-premise infrastructure, they would be willing to pay you well for that and pay you to set it up. Well, the same thing's happening in the back end. They're just not seeing it. So you have to educate them on the entire process of what's happening and charge them for it. So, go ahead. You sound like you didn't ask a question.
Well, I was just going to ask, what would be the bare minimum that you would think that you were actually making a profit? I mean, if you were just going to ballpark it.
I don't think that's something we should even discuss. We need to discuss how we can maximize a profit.
I guess
bare minimum is.
The reason I'm asking that is because I know that there's thoughts going through these guys' heads that they're thinking their version of the bare minimum is probably going to be a lot lower than what I'm expecting you to say. That's why I was asking that question.
Well, no, and I appreciate that. And the reason that we're doing this webinar, Dan, like we talked beforehand, is also because it's an education process for everyone that's on this call. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't know what they can get for this. So they're going to listen to the lowest common denominator that's out there and then try to price beat it. That's the worst thing you can do. That is the worst thing you can do. I would stick with a low end. You're going to see right around $99 to $100 a user, and that's going to be making little or no money. So if you're just going after, if you want to target, maximum number of seats, and that's how you're going to make your margin, go for $99 to $100 a seat, because you're going to need a lot of seats to maintain that.
And I think it's important to note that volume, especially for small business, is usually a difficult game to play.
Exactly.
Rick, thanks for your question. I'm going to ask that in just a minute. volume is a very difficult game to play when you know it's just you or it's you and a couple technicians. It's very difficult to do that. So it's important to bring that price up. And you know the cool thing about this industry is that we're not fighting a race to the bottom at this moment. You know, like
Right.
it's not something you have to really deal with. It's cool because people don't really understand it yet. But you know it gives you a lot more leeway there.
Mhm.
People are asking a lot of questions about what. Well, let me back up real quick and just say, so when we were originally talking before this webinar started, you were saying, well, I charge $200 per user per month, and you know, obviously that was a bit of a surprise for me. You know, a
Mhm.
lot of the people here were saying 125, $100, $90, things like that. So, you know, what we're saying here basically is, hey, you're not going to make a lot of profit off of that. You're going to
Mhm.
find yourself, you're going to feel like you're getting a lot of money coming in because people are writing checks to you, but it's not going to feel like you're actually making any forward motion. You're just going to be treading water. So when you push that up another $100 per user per month, what I'm just going to go ahead and jump ahead of this. I actually wrote this down, but you know, it's like, what comes with that? What are they getting when they, you know, when you send them that bill at the end of the month?
They're getting the cloud workspace. And any tier 1 support that I need to provide with that to see if it's a cloud workspace problem or an internal problem. You know, if they're not on my support offering, then I'm billing them for it. If they're on my support offering, I'm giving them that tier 1 support.
So does that include any other licensing like
Oh, I'm
Office
sorry, yes,
or?
Dan, I'm sorry, yes. It includes Office 365 E3. So I was able, if anyone's not an intermediate partner, Intermedia or AppRiver are great partnerships to work with O365. I was an Intermedia partner and was able to get it for $16 a shot at E3 rather than 20.
Gotcha.
And then what else did that include? That was pretty much it. Yeah, because that's the only thing we needed to provide.
Did you do any kind of hardware stuff?
No,
Gotcha. Okay.
only you know it was just one of those things where if they needed a new machine, we took all my agreements up front were I'm going to mark everything up 20%. You know it, and because you're going to let me order it, and we're going to get the right thing the first time, rather than have you go order something that may not work.
Gotcha. Rob, I'm not sure I 100% understand your question. I think you saying who purchases the license for Office
Oh, I know he's
365?
yeah, I know what he's talking about. So basically, what I did is I purchased the Office license, the Office 365 licenses, and just told when I sold the cloud solution, I just told them Office 365 was included, and I bundled that into my pricing to my actual end client. So yeah, I was getting hit for $16 plus the CloudJumper seat price, and then I would go ahead and just roll that all into what I was charging my client. I think that answers your question, Rob. If it doesn't, let me know.
Gotcha. And then Rick was also, yeah, he said it does. Rick was also asking about things like antivirus, RMM, backup, stuff like that.
No, those are great. Those are great questions. Those are all wonderful selling tools on why to move to the cloud and what's included. Because with the CloudJumper solution, RMM is already on the servers. It's already monitoring the servers. You don't have to go to that extent to go ahead and spend, if you're a continual partner, spend another $40 a month for something to monitor the server when you could actually spend a lot less and work with virtual administrator and use Kaseya. You don't have to do that, and you still have to maintain the endpoints. Antivirus is included on the CloudJumper solution, but maintaining the endpoints is still on the MSP side.
Yeah. I think
As
that's
far as
one of the
back,
reasons why when I first heard about it, I was so interested in the whole building like bring your own device programs, because then that actually kind of weasels you out of even having to do that.
okay.
Right? I
Well,
mean,
I'd like to touch on it does, but I'd really like to touch on the backup, because one of the key selling points that I've noticed a lot of people aren't taking advantage of is number one, backup with regard to a cloud solution. Number two is security. And when I say security, I don't mean encryption of drives or encryption of data to and from something. And hopefully all our people that are attending can appreciate this. One of the best ways that I always used to, to put the security cell into a prospect's mind was sitting in their office and saying, you know, if someone broke into your office right now, and some small businesses don't even have alarm systems, we all know that, but if someone broke in here right now, cut all the cables, power cables to the machines, and ran out of here, they'd have your entire data structure. Because we all know, as well and good as we all want to be in encrypt hard drives, we all know that if we pull them out of that machine and hook them to a USB sled, we don't even need the admin passwords. Okay, so what you're going to gain with moving to a cloud solution is never having to worry about that, number one. But number two, if it does happen, being up and running in 10 minutes and not missing any of your data. Because all you need now is a machine and a place that has internet. Yeah, another thing that it really solved problems for us was when we had a machine go bad, we kept a spare machine on site. And all they did was pull it out of the closet, plug it in, turn it on, and they were up and running.
Nice.
So just a little bit of information there. Most people don't think about that. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to follow up to that, just saying that Kyle Metzer does a lot of our programming at Virtual Administrator here, and yesterday his phone broke. Today his Comcast connection went down, and then the router at their house died too, and so he had to go work from Wegmans for the day, but he could do that.
Right.
Which is like really cool. So Wegmans, for those who don't know, is a local grocery store. It's a grocery store that has like a cafe kind of area, so you can set up shop, and that's what he was doing. It was like, you can do those kind of things. It's like, it may not be optimal, obviously, but yeah. Steven says he'll put on 20 pounds. Yeah, that's probably true. It's delicious food over there. But anyway, real quick question, moving back towards that dollar price.
Sure.
Stephen was asking about if there's a geographical relevance to that. He was asking where you are geographically that you would be able to get that price.
Well, I'll answer that like I answer with everyone. You can get that price anywhere pretty much. Again, it's all about educating the client on everything that's included with the service that you're providing them. If you do not provide and educate your client or your suspect on the entire benefit suite of the solution you're providing, you're never going to get that money. But it's geographically, it's not really that sensitive, believe it or not. It's really not. We have, I've talked to, since I've been on board with CloudJumper, we talked to people in Michigan that are getting very close to that. And then we talk to people in Kentucky that are getting very close, if not more than that per seat. So it's absolutely doable. It has nothing to do with where you are. It has everything to do about the solution that you're providing, believing in the solution you're providing. Number three, using the solution you're providing. I cannot stress that enough. Only you can sell to your customers, your low-hanging fruit, your current customers. No one sells to them better than you. And if you're currently using it, the experts for your current customers on knowing how it's going to benefit them. No one else can sell them like you can. Do it. I can't emphasize that enough. Run after that low-hanging fruit and do it this week, because it's there. And if you're not talking to your current customers about moving to the cloud, somebody else is, and they're going to take them from you very quickly.
That's very true. Cool. So guys, if you have any more questions about that, feel free to punch it in. I see a bunch of stuff I think we're starting to move a little bit past that. So I'm going to move on for the moment, and we'll wrap back around if we want to touch on this again. So I think that you look at that number and it's like, wow, that's a big number. But realistically, when you start talking about, and we've covered this in previous webinars, and we'll I'm sure we'll be talking about it again as we move forward. You talk about the benefits of cloud solutions. Talk about things like bring your own device programs. You talk about making hardware last a lot longer. You talk about remote employees, or the ability to streamline, HR, the reality of less downtime. The money factor becomes less of an issue, because you need to talk to companies who are willing to invest in their infrastructure. They are out there. They're probably not the 5-user guys, even though that seems like an easy number to hit. It's probably more in the 10 and up range. And Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that you start to, as companies start to hit that 10-user mark, they start to feel a lot more comfortable about the idea of investing in their IT. This is true for MSPs too, and just for general managed services. And it's like, you start to see people who are like, hey, I'm willing to pay this much money because I can see the benefits now. When there's that 5-user mark, they're like, hey, I just run down to the Office, the Office Depot and buy the latest crap PC that I can find.
Right.
They don't see the value yet.
Now, I will say, just to throw it out there to the group, I will say some of the niche markets that are very receptive to it, that are your 5-person offices, are the legal niche. Small law firms love this stuff because now all of a sudden they can look at everything while they're sitting in court, when they're doing something else. They absolutely eat this stuff up. Another one is accounting firms, because they can grow up and grow down. All of a sudden now, if it's a 5-person accounting firm and they're running 6, we all know this happens, they're all running 6 or 7 versions of QuickBooks, and then they're running ATX and everything like that on top of it. And all of a sudden they don't have to buy a server every 2 years now or something like that. They already have a significant investment in that software. And all of a sudden, if you can move them to the cloud for $200 a seat, and oh, by the way, when you need to grow during tax season, it's only another $200 a seat, and then we'll turn it off and you get that $200 back. You're not paying for stuff you're not using. It's a huge benefit to them.
Yeah, it's good to be, because they spin up and down pretty rapidly
Mm-hmm.
over the course of I know that there's a lot of, my wife worked as a bookkeeper for a while, and you kind of, it's like a seasonal business almost.
Right.
Start in December and quit at it's really more like the middle of May, end of April. It's like an extra 2 weeks of all the people who are late and suddenly realizing they're in trouble.
And and that actually is a good point, because other areas where a lot of MSPs, I'm going to give out some super secret information that I'm sure some people out there know, but some MSPs may not know. One of our best markets was always private schools or charter schools. They don't have the same requirements that public schools have to meet. And so if you can go into, let's say, a mid-sized public school, private school, and they have, let's say, 400 students. Let's say they're a smaller one. And then they've got a staff of another 120. Well, what you'll typically see in a private school environment is that'll have probably 8 to 12 servers, 3 IT staff, and a whole bunch of overhead. And if you price it out and put everything in there right, you can usually walk in there, reduce their staff, save them $180,000 a year, and walk out with a wonderfully lucrative contract.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Are there any other, while we're on the topic of market, Mike was actually asking that exact question, and that is a question that I think it's the next one, was it? No, that was that one. Nope, we talked about that. Nope, that's it. All right, never mind. I didn't write it on there. But are there other markets that you would recommend looking into?
Absolutely. One that is usually very underutilized by the MSP market is veterinary practices. Veterinary hospitals are extremely technically advanced, and they are willing to pay the money to either move to the cloud or be supported extremely well.
Nice. That's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little golden nugget.
Absolutely.
Max also mentioned a couple more directly in the question. I'll just read this out. Where do you put it? Startups, customers with distributed environments.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Or liquid employees like accounting firms, which we just mentioned. Or any company that is facing a hardware refresh. It's always an easy way. That's a great time to do it. And Patrick has mentioned this before. If they have Server 2003 edition, Microsoft Server 2003, they're running a server with that. They're probably looking at an upgrade sometime really soon, since it's officially not being supported anymore. So it's a great time to make that suggestion and try to bump people up. Cool. So while we're on that subject, on a slightly different note, but pretty much the same, how did you go about finding clients? Did you have a process
Oh,
that you set up to bring new people
absolutely.
in?
Absolutely. The one that we used the most and was most successful for us, believe it or not, was canvassing. Canvassing was hugely successful for us in our market. And I had a very, very specific, I attribute it to, we had an excellent person doing it, number one. Number two, we learned very quickly that we needed a very, very specific script for when they walked into any business. And if people are interested and want to sign up, I'll include that. I'll send them that script. How's that? But I'm not willing to give that that nugget out there because it was amazing. It was amazing. We were closing. We were getting 2 to 5 leads a day. Not all cloud, but leads to get in and at least talk to them.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So was that, you would just walk into businesses cold doing that, or?
Oh, absolutely.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. I had the most amazing person that's what she wanted to do, and she was really, really good at it.
Yeah, I think when you're doing sales, finding a good salesperson is fantastic. And if you can give them the script, I think that's one of the important thing. So I've helped there's an IT staffing firm called Bowman Williams. I've done a lot of work with them over the last couple of years on the tech side. And one of the things that they do is they help staff salespeople into companies. And, I've had the opportunity to kind of learn a little bit from them on this one. And they always talk about when you're hiring a salesperson, the worst thing that you can do is hire a salesperson and give them nothing. So like if you have a script like that you can just hand to them, that's huge because they actually have an opportunity now to actually know what they're talking about. Like salespeople are not generally tech savvy, and so you need to give them
and
that.
to be honest with you, Dean, what we did is we used interns in the CS program sometimes from the local colleges.
Oh,
They
there you
helped
go.
out, and they were awesome because they had an understanding already, and they were usually very energetic about doing it, and they worked out exceptionally well. So canvassing was really the biggest thing that paid off for us.
So can you explain that, because I'm not sure I'm actually familiar with that word, canvassing.
What? Basically going around to, setting someone up with giveaways and company information and having them go walk around an office park and knock on doors and introduce himself.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. That makes sense.
Yep. The second way that was...
It's your classic cold call right there. Just,
yeah.
sending the body out there and having the script in hand and, getting, basically getting your foot in the door and showing a local presence.
Yep, exactly, Pat. And then, we really had 2 things that I think were critical for us beyond that is we had a very well-documented follow-up process. So once we found someone that had an interest, we had an extremely well-documented follow-up process on exactly how we would do it, and that was beneficial. And we had a very structured sales process where at the end of this, by the time we found someone that was interested, we could usually close. If they had an interest, we could usually close them in 2 weeks and start onboarding.
Wow, that's pretty cool. 2-week turnaround is extremely high.
Yeah. But it's all about,
when I said extremely fast, that's what I mean. It's extremely fast.
I would throw that out to the audience. If you really want to start, recognizing those efficiencies, it's. And everyone thinks it's ConnectWise or Autotask or whatever it is. It's really just finding your process for a sale, finding your process for a follow-up, finding your process for a referral. And once you work those 3, everything else will fall into place, how you use all your other tools. But the tools are important. I would say that the processes, at least in my case, were more important.
Wow. Roy asked a good question here. He said, talking about canvassing, did you guys ever run into like no solicitation rules?
Oh yeah, but no solicitation only means if don't come in if you're not offering something I don't need. everyone wants to move to the cloud, don't they, Dan? Everyone needs security.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I'm not laughing. I'm serious about it. That's what I believe. In my mind, no solicitation means don't come in here if you're going to try to sell me something I don't need. Who doesn't need better computer security? Who doesn't need better backup? Who doesn't? You see where I'm going with this?
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Huh, interesting. Well, I guess that, it's
It's all
definitely,
state of mind.
the old ways are the good ways sometimes. You just get out there and pound the pavement and churn up some leads. This can be tough. I mean, if you're a small company and it's just you, but I like how you already mentioned that, you had someone who was doing this for you.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, if you guys are interested, if you're already signed up, shoot me an email. Or if you aren't signed up yet, you can just go to the sign up, and we're going to talk about that in just a second about how you can actually get started if you haven't done that yet. And we'll get that out because I think that's really cool. One of the cool things about Scott moving to CloudJumper was that he kind of took all of his internal docs and made them available, and that's something that we actually have for you. So that really helps.
One other thing that I was
Yeah.
going to mention is,
Uh-huh.
the canvassing was the way that we developed interest pretty much locally. We also did some lunch and learns, which were very good. Above and beyond that, the two things that really made a difference were, number one, we did our own webinars too. So, just because you're in Atlanta and someone's in Detroit doesn't mean you can't give them a demo. If anyone's ever seen Pat do a demo, that's the pinnacle of a demo right there for CloudJumper, let me tell you. The only thing that works better than that is what I would do is when I would be in a room, like a conference room or their office, I would go ahead and I would set up, the NFR accounts that CloudJumper gives you, use them. They're your most powerful tool in selling this product. I would set up 3 users. I would find out what applications that prospect or suspect used beforehand. I'd go ahead and get them at least provisioned onto my demo accounts. And then I'd walk in and I would show them their own applications running in the cloud. And then I'd go ahead and close the browser on the laptop, pull it back up exactly where I was on an iPad, show them they could do it if they had to critically on a phone and the whole 9 yards. And once you can do that for someone, they're pretty much just like, yeah, we need this. This is amazing. How can we do this? Get them excited about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, your attitude towards it is a big deal.
It's everything.
Yeah, because if you aren't convinced that this is the thing for them, then obviously it's going to be very hard to change their mind.
Well, I would back up one step further, Dan. If you don't believe, if the people on this call don't believe it's the thing for them, then they're never going to sell it. If they're not willing to use it in their own businesses, if they don't think it's right for them, there's no way they'll ever sell it, and no way they'll ever sell it for $200 a seat. And that's actually sad, because there's probably millions of dollars of low-hanging fruit that we're talking to right now.
Yeah, definitely. There is a, it's just sad because some of this just comes down to motivation, getting motivated, getting excited about stuff. Workspaces as a service is an interesting product because people don't really know that much about it yet. Last year I was calling it the MSP 4.0 model because it's kind of like the thing that's coming in to kind of sweep out the, not really sweep out, but just it'll be the next tier above the all-you-can-eat type managed services model. And because people haven't heard about it yet, that means that you're going to find yourself explaining it very often. And I think you've used the word educate a lot, and I think that that's an important word to note because a lot of people will come at this from the idea of convince. You have to convince people that they want this or convince them that they need it. That's not really true. I think you come on too strong when you're thinking in those terms. I think, you just get excited about the possibilities that it offers to your potential clients, and then it gets, you get excited about the possibilities that it creates for your prospects, and then you just educate them on those possibilities, and they will fall in line. You know, it gets a lot easier for them to sign on with something when they see that you're all about it, you're excited about it, you're, you know, you already see the benefits. You know, when I'm out there doing tech stuff, people always joke, you know, the people that I work with, they're like, yeah, whatever Dan says, I just do it. They're like, I don't care. If he told me to jump off a building, I'll just do it because I know that he probably knows what he's talking about, and I'll probably be better off if I jumped off that building than if I didn't. And it's like, you know, when you're the tech person, you're in that role, and people will listen to whatever you tell them to do because they know that you know what's best for them. And so, you know, giving off that air of excitement and
confidence
and knowledge.
Yeah, well, and one of the things that I found interesting early on when I moved internally to a cloud solution is when I would start talking to my clients, I was, you know, we moved to the cloud internally, and they went, really, you did? If you're their trusted resource, you know, that term that we always hear in our industry, they're immediately going to go, well, how will that help me? Will that help me somehow? What problems will that solve for me? I mean, just by telling your clients that you've taken this step, it immediately adds credibility to that solution.
A quick show of hands, if I put together a like a sales webinar to talk about this with your clients, like if I put together the slides and made it interesting, would you be interested in something like that, where you could just take that slide deck, slap your logo on it, and then run that webinar for your clients? Would that be something that would be interesting for you guys?
Dan, maybe I'd like to follow up on Nicholas's question about application certification.
Yeah. While you guys are throwing your answers out there, go ahead.
Sure. So the question was, you know,
he had looked at a few clients and he didn't notice that their certain line of business applications were on our approved list. So it is very easy to certify an app and get it added to the list. And it's actually, if you're logged into CWS, that management console, it's just the button to the right-hand side. It's called New Application Certification. You click that form, you give us the install link, the version you need, the name of the application, and then our team will go ahead and certify that, run it through the testing process, and get it added to that global list. So we're certifying, you know, 2 or 3 new applications a week. We're at 2,000 plus applications currently in the stack. And I mean, that's really one of our biggest competitive advantages, is getting a lot of those old legacy apps to run in the cloud. We beat a lot of vendors to the punch in many cases. So as long as it'll run on a 2012 server, it should be just fine for the cloud. You can check the system requirements, but we've got a lot of funky apps to run pretty good, given given how they were built in the situation.
Yeah.
Well, point of rental being a good one.
Yep. Exactly.
Say that again. Point of rental.
Yes, it's actually a large equipment rental piece of software that manages like renting excavators and the huge dump trucks, and yeah, I'd never seen it before, and it was actually for one of my clients at the time. And I went through the application process, and you know, it's very easy. I want to say, geez, I think it was one day. They had the application installed for me after I provided the license information and everything, and I did my user acceptance training. Said, yeah, it's working perfectly, and boom, we were done. The other thing I'd like to mention that a lot of people may have a question about, or at least I wasn't as savvy as I should have been at the time, is even applications that require a dongle of some sort, a security dongle of some sort, will run on this solution. Point of rental is one of those solutions that has a security dongle, and we can actually go ahead and get those to run.
That's cool.
And it's a simple process of, you know, talking to whoever you're working with and just making sure that you send the dongle in and make sure it's labeled correctly and it gets to the right place. But yeah, we can even use and host those applications.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that I was just going to mention real quick. I did answer him in the chat. One thing I was saying was that in a private message. One thing I was saying is that if an application isn't certified, that's usually because it's just straight up not compatible with the environment that Nginx has, that CloudJumper has, and they're few and far between. I did happen to trip over one of them. It's SonicWall's virtual VPN device, because it messes with the networking hardware. It makes it a little finicky for working in a shared environment. But most applications are just an application, and the reason that it's not certified is just because they haven't bumped into it yet, which means that, you know, a quick certification application is really easy to do. I did a real quick video, which I just put into the chat on YouTube if you guys are interested in learning more about installing applications on the server. I believe I covered going through the application process. It's like a 4-minute, 55-second, 5-minute video. So it's really easy. You know, it's really short and sweet, and just goes through kind of the details of that. So if you're interested in learning more about how to do that, that will cover some of those questions as well. And Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the turnaround time on certification is 9 business days, correct?
Yeah, that's for new applications that we don't have on the stack. For ones that are already certified, then it's a 3 business day SLA. And it's usually done within the same day, but that's just buying us some time in case we get every partner submitting, you know, 15 apps in one given day. That'd be quite the install process.
Got to be able to work through the queue. Yeah, so, you know, so if you look at the list of certified apps, which we can get you a copy if you want to get a copy of that. If you look through the list and you don't find the one,
CWS. Yeah.
In CWS?
Yep, you can. So if you go to that new application, it's kind of hidden, so I apologize, but if you go into that new application certification form, you'll see a link. It says previously submitted applications, and that'll generate the whole list there. It'll show you every app that's been submitted, and then which ones have been approved. It'll say true, or if it's not supported, it'll say false. And if you look down through that list, you'll see maybe 3 or 4 that say false. I think, you know, for whatever reason, like Adobe version 9 does not work. So there's like every once in a while you'll find that app that just won't work. But for the most part, we're getting most all applications submitted and certified.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so I think that covers it pretty well. Did we answer your question? I believe it was Nathan, right? Yeah, Nicholas, I'm sorry. Okay, great. Glad that answered your question. Okay, a couple other real quick. Okay, before I finish doing questions, we're running out of time, but I'm willing to stick around a little bit longer if you guys want to stick around for an extra 10 minutes or so. But before we do that, I just wanted to cover this real quick. Let me just fast forward here. Well, this is just real quick what's included. They have like this quote-unquote free month of services because there's a cutoff time, and they don't bill you until the first of the month if you start after, what is it, Patrick? I always blank on this.
21st.
It's the 21st.
21st.
So if you start after the 21st of the month, then that means that you're not billed till the following month on the 1st. If you start anytime during a month before the 21st, then you'll be billed on the 1st of the following of that next month. So, if you start today, then your first bill for whatever client you're bringing on would be September 1st. And so, you get a little bit of time to play around, get some stuff migrated over. It gives you that ramp up time where you may not necessarily be getting billed by your client, or you bill your client and you make 100% profit, which is what I root for. You also get a 25% discount on NFR licenses. We have a training program, which we've talked about a little bit. I just posted one of the videos from that. We're at, I did a series on migrations earlier this year. However, next week, we're going to do another webinar, same time, same day, same channel, on migration, and we're going to get Scott back in here, and we're going to go through everything that he does on migration, on how to migrate people over. He's got some really cool worksheets that he sent over. We're not going to give them away today. We're going to give them away next week. However, if you're in a hurry, you can email me, and I might crack. Give them away a little early, but we will be going over them next week.
To that, Dan, I'm also going to throw some really good information about proposals in there, and also things that every single one on the call should be including in their contracts.
Awesome. So we're basically going to recover it, probably better than I did it because Scott has a lot of real world experience. So definitely better than I did it. And I think that it'll be very, very useful. So, make sure to come back next week. I'll be sending the invite out for that shortly. If you are ready to get started and you're excited and interested in actually doing this for your own company, if you haven't already, you just go to cloudjumper.com/VA, which is virtual administrator, and that makes sure that you kind of come under our umbrella. And then you just fill out the information there. They will ask for a credit card up front, but they do not bill you until the first billing date. So, if you got started today, like I said, that would be September 1st. And that will get you rolling. So I think that
and Dan,
kind of covers that.
They can even register just to get credentials to the suite and get access to all of our marketing materials. So as long as you don't create a client and provision seats, you'd never get a charge.
There you go. But obviously that's not the right choice. Rick, yes, you can spin up it's considered NFR seats, so it's a minimum of 3 seats for NFRs, and they are $30 a seat, correct? It's $30 a seat, so basically
Yep.
$90 per month total. So like if you signed up today, you would have the first month to just play around, and then if you decide that it isn't worth it, you can just kill it and you wouldn't get a bill. However, if you decide... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in reference to the NFRs, that's definitely my best performing partners all have and use the NFRs. It's one thing you buy the NFRs, and I've had some that spin down. They say, well, we just didn't see much value in it, or we weren't using it. And unless you actually log in and move your internal guys, even if it's 1 or 2 folks, maybe a remote user, move somebody on it full time to get that experience. Load up your applications. Ask and certify your customers' applications that they use, so that way you can bring those for demos. So it does you no good to spin up the NFRs and not use them. You really want to get in, dig in, leverage our support team and the platform for what it's supposed to be used for, and you'll find much more value than just having them just in case. Really dig in and use them.
Right, and that goes back to what I said earlier. No one can sell their current client, anyone on the call, their current client, like them, if they're using a platform. And that was one of the first things that we did. I said, nope, we're moving everything up, because if we don't know it, if it doesn't work for us, it's not going to work for our clients. And everyone on this call knows what works best for their clients. So no one can sell them as well as they can unless they don't.
Yeah. Definitely. So, yeah, so basically what they just said, I think that it's important to spin up those NFR seats and keep them. They're good for marketing. They're good for internal use. So if you decide you aren't interested, then you can do it without getting billed, but then I would recommend sticking around with them and keeping them for your own company. And it goes back to that whole thing that we just talked about on believing in the product. If you believe in it, then you start to experience what it does for your company. It's easy to talk about what it'll do for other people. So I know that sounds very MLM, but it's just the truth of pretty much anything in life. So anyway, I did want to cover a few more of these questions here. Dennis was asking about spinning up a VoIP server. Do you guys have the tech to actually let that happen, where they could spin up where you would actually host their VoIP server?
Question. That would be an Anthony question. I'm not sure on that one.
Okay. So Dennis, we'll get back to you. I'll make sure to ask Anthony. I'll Skype it to him, and I'll get back to you on that one. Chances are
I can answer that question. We can
Okay.
set up a separate line of business server. There's no guaranteed QoS on voice and video, but if you just want to set up a separate server, you can always set up a separate line of business server as part of the application and run it.
There you go. And just quick announce yourself, because I don't think anyone heard your name attached to your voice.
That was Max, by the way.
That was Max.
Yeah, gotcha. Cool. Okay, so yeah, so that's basically the answer there. So there's no QoS on voice or video, but you can spin up a server. So you could also have the VoIP server local, and then have their workspaces still in the cloud where they could connect, and you would set up a VPN between the two so that they can talk to each other. So that's also another possibility. Let's see. Rick was asking about the per user cost. Does that include all the infrastructure costs, like the cost of running VMs? The answer to that is yes. Pretty much everything server-wise is hosted. What's not included are things like Office 365 licenses, any software licenses. They will obviously not be including any hardware to access it. So that would be like, the local machines, like PCs, Correct. Tablets, all that kind of stuff. HIPAA compliance, the answer to that is yes. They meet pretty much every compliance you could possibly throw at them. Including
we have a great security document that if people are interested, we can send out to them.
Gotcha. So so if you want to get more info on that, then we can definitely include that. But the answer is probably yes to almost every security compliance you could possibly throw at them, and then some, because I think you guys were looking at, what was that, a Tier 5 data center?
Tier 4 Gold.
Tier 4 Gold is what they're calling it now.
Yep.
That's the one out in is it?
SuperNat in Las Vegas, Profit Bricks.
It's in Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like basically as secure as a data center can get. Was someone else going to talk? I thought I heard someone. Guess that's a no. So Matthew has a really good question about O365 licenses. Here's the deal. When we first started working with CloudJumper, you would literally just say, hey, I want to buy an Office 365 license from you, and then they would just provision it on the server. So it was really easy to get going. Microsoft, in true Microsoft form, made it more difficult. So CloudJumper was not able to sell them direct because there were too many links in the chain. So the way the licensing was written up, it was being resold technically too many times, even though no one was making any profit off of it. They just wanted to install it on a server. So now you have to basically bring your own license. What that means, though, is that you can't just use the regular O365 license. You have to use at least Pro Plus or E3. So those are the two options that are out there. It's slightly more expensive than the lowest tier of Office 365, but Microsoft will not allow that other version to be installed on the server, so that obviously creates some issues. That is also a recent ruling from Microsoft, so that changed things up a little bit for a couple of our people. And also, we had made mention of it being easy before. It's not more difficult, it's just a little bit different than it used to be. So Scott, you mentioned...
Actually, Dan, I'll add to that. So it's actually easier. So Microsoft did change their licensing requirements in about February. They created a new certification program for Microsoft CSPs called the Microsoft Shared Computer Activation Program. We are part of that, and that means that we are legally licensed and authorized to host Office 365 in the cloud. However, as part of their new rules, the only two versions they allow to be hosted on a terminal server, and that's whether it's ours, another cloud provider, or a user's terminal server, are Pro Plus or E3 or greater. So as long as you have one of those, regardless of where you purchased it from, whether it's Ingram or from Microsoft or Intermedia or GoDaddy or whomever, all you have to do is request that we install those applications, which is just a checkbox. And then when the user logs in for the first time, it automatically authorizes that user, and then it's completely integrated and they're good to go. The other benefit of Office 365 is that you can install on up to 5 devices at no additional charge, and our environment doesn't even count towards that 5. So you can install on ours, and then you still have 5 other devices you can install it on.
Gotcha. So there you go. So that, I think, helps sum that up a little bit. And it's super fast, like stupid fast installing Office on their server. That's not one of the apps that you have to request be installed. It's available as a pre-install. So you literally, like Max said, you tick the checkbox and it just is instant. It just shows up, which is actually kind of a bit of a parlor trick to show end users. You can show them how fast apps provision. It's a very fun little trick.
It's great when you're doing a demo.
Yeah, you just say, hey, look, check out how fast it is to install Office, and you tick a checkbox and it just appears on the desktop. It's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. Okay, let's see. I think that covers most of the questions that I saw come in. If I missed anyone's questions, let me know. I think we're about 10 minutes past the hour here, so I think we're going to start wrapping up here in a minute. Yeah, I think that covers everything.
Excellent.
Scott, thank you so much for taking time to be on the line, and also thank you to Max and to Patrick. And we also had Andrew on the line here. He's just listening in, but I know several of you know Andrew Rogers as well. And guys, thank you for taking some time for us. We are going to do this again next week. So I thought we had planned it a little bit further out, but it is definitely for next week. Next Tuesday at Tuesday, August 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to kind of reconvene, and we're going to sneak through a lot of Scott's documentation. We're going to steal a little bit of it, show it on the call. People who are registered for the service will be able to, get access to download it and use it in their business. So I think that, this is going to be a lot more of an education call. Be very, very well. This was basically an education call. It's about as educational as it gets. That one's going to be even more so, though, and so definitely don't miss that, and we'll get you guys on the call then. So I think that covers everything.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Dan. I appreciate you you hosting this.
Yep. Very cool.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep. All right. We will see you guys next week.
Adios.